Welcome to Offstage, Stage to Screen. This event is presented by Citibank. City Entertainment, anywhere and everywhere. Let City Entertainment bring the fun to you. Through the City Entertainment program, you can enjoy virtual access to music, sports, culinary experiences, and more. Hear every note, experience unforgettable moments, see the action. Now you have access, virtually anywhere.
Here's what else you need to know today.
Hey everyone, I'm Michael Paulson. I'm the theater reporter at the New York Times. Welcome to this fourth episode of Offstage, our digital series exploring the world of theater during this pandemic. Tonight we're taking a look at movie making, and more specifically, how and why stories written for the stage are being adapted for the screen. We have two fascinating conversations coming up, one with the cast and creative team of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which of course started as a play by August Wilson, and one with the writers of The Prom, a big Broadway musical. To help us set the stage, I'm joined now by Alexis Solosky, a contributing writer at the Times who recently explored this phenomenon for our Arts and Leisure section. Hey, Alexis.
Hey, Michael.
Thanks for being here. I wanted to ask you, you wrote that for years, Broadway has been adapting movies for the stage, but now we're seeing a bit of a reversal as streaming services snap up stage stories. Why is this happening?
I think there are a lot of reasons. One is that the Broadway to Hollywood pipeline has started to go both ways a little bit. There are a lot more playwrights and writers' rooms today. Also, Broadway is arguably cool again. It keeps breaking attendance and box office records every year. Hamilton charts on the Billboard, which it's been a long time. What was the last time, Michael? Was it like One Night in Bangkok?
A long time.
And I think most significantly, there are so many streaming services all of a sudden, and they are so hungry for content. And a Broadway musical may not appeal to quite as many people as a Marvel movie, but I think it's close. And Broadway fans are dedicated. If you make a movie of something they love, they will click on it. They will have a lot of thoughts about it, but they will click on it. So you know that you have a built-in demographic that's eager to see this.
So speaking of theater fans, I know you've devoted a lot of your life to theater going. When you watch these film adaptations, what do you enjoy and what do you miss?
I mean, I love the sound. Something that we were talking about the other day was how amazing the Prom sounds, because I think it had something like 9 musicians in the pit on Broadway, and I think there are almost 90 that were able to play live for the film. There's nothing else like that. There's nothing else like going from a chorus of 6 to 30. But on the other hand, I am seeing movies these days, like anyone, mostly by myself in front of a screen. And I miss just the energetic feeling of being in a theater surrounded by 100 or 1,000 people who are laughing with me and crying with me and clapping with me. And I don't think that anything replaces that experience of being in the same room with the live actors, like doing the splits, as they hit like that perfect C in front of you.
So tonight we're going to talk about two very different film adaptations of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and The Prom, both made for Netflix. For viewers who might not be familiar with those titles, can you give us a quick introduction?
Sure. So The Prom is based around a musical that played on Broadway in 2018. It's since been filmed by Ryan Murphy, and it is about 4 washed up Broadway stars who are very much in need of good publicity. And they stumble across an article about a high school girl who isn't allowed to bring her girlfriend to prom. And so even though no one has asked them, they decide to fly to Indiana to solve the problem with glitter and song. So, and then August Wilson, American Master, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, played on Broadway in, I think, 1984. Interestingly, it's the only play in August Wilson's 20th Century Cycle that isn't set in Pittsburgh. It's set in Chicago. And it's about Ma Rainey, who is a real life blues singer, and the conflicts that arise when she goes into the studio to record her latest album.
That's great. So finally, do you think that this proliferation of film adaptations of stage shows will continue after the pandemic, or what are your expectations?
I mean, I think it's going to be with us for a while. They haven't released West Side Story yet, or In the Heights, or Diana. They haven't started Wicked. Merrily We Roll Along, just started. We have Tick Tick Boom coming. So, I mean, there's a long list that hasn't even seen the light of day. But beyond that, I think it's going to be with us for a while. I think that Hollywood has recognized that there is something really, really special about particularly the movie musical, and I don't think it's going away.
Great, lots to look forward to. Thank you, Alexis. Now let's turn to our first project. My colleague, Reggie Ugwu, had a conversation with the Ma Rainey's cast and creative team. Let's take a look.
I'm here today to discuss the film adaptation of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, based on the August Wilson play of the same name. The story is inspired by the real-life heroine Ma Rainey, a powerhouse vocalist known as the Mother of the Blues, who rose to superstardom at a time when Black Americans were largely shut out of mainstream entertainment. But the film isn't only interested in Ma's story. It introduces us to her four band members, Levy, Cutler, Toledo, and Slow Drag, who, while gathered on a hot summer day in Chicago to record Ma's latest album, argue about art, fame, race, religion, and when a good time is more than just a good time. It premieres on December 18th on Netflix and marks the last recorded film appearance of co-star Chadwick Boseman, who died after a battle with cancer in August. Joining me to discuss the film are director George C. Wolfe, Viola Davis, aka Ma Rainey, Coleman Domingo, aka Cutler, Glenn Turman, aka Toledo, and Michael Potts, aka Slow Drag. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
The movie is dedicated to Chadwick Boseman, who delivers an unforgettable performance as Levy. I wonder, what are some of your memories working with him? And what did he bring to the performance that you saw as his collaborators that we might not know about as viewers?
I love the way the way Chadwick embraced the instrument that he was to play, the cornet. He was very serious about learning the mechanics of and playing. He wanted to really play all of the music. I mean, he wanted to play it for real. He was serious so that anytime he picked it up, it was in the right position. Anytime he sat it down, it was in the right position. You know, we all kind of took that cue, you know, as to not be outdone, as actors are.
This group, I'm confused.
Also, all of a sudden, like Potts, I still hold him to it because I remember the night he made a declaration that he was going to take the bass home, and that this was his new thing to do for the rest of his life, you know.
Where is it, Potts? You got it?
Well, it ain't in here. We had finished recording a song. Okay, it's done. We don't have to go near that song again. And at one point, Chadwick came up to me and said, listen. And he went, I got it. He was still obsessing about the song after we had recorded the damn song.
And then that grin, you know, when he was happy about a moment, he had this big toothy grin, like, I got it. This is what this moment is. His whole countenance just light up. It was infectious. It was wonderful.
I just watched it 2 nights ago. Because the first time I saw any actor does, you watch it with a critical eye and look at, oh, they use that take, or oh, that's what the camera is doing. You know, oh, is that what it sounds like? But then I decided, I asked, could I watch the film again? And I was floored, to be very honest. By Chad's work, by everyone's work, Viola, Michael, Glenn, George's direction, I feel like I could see it even better because I had a bit more distance to it. I heard Chad's language in a different way. It brought tears to my eyes very early on, knowing what I know now, and knowing we're all very well able-bodied people, and we were doing this tremendous work and showing up and, you know, wrestling with August's language. And this man had another massive struggle on top of it. I don't know how he did it. I don't know how we did it. So I don't know how he did it.
There's a transcendence that happens when art really works. And I don't think that you can go timidly into an August Wilson narrative. There's too many moving parts because our culture, listen, it's a spirituality that is a part of the work. There is a pathos and tragedy that's a part of the work. There's a humor, and all of it, you've got to give yourself fully over to that. You just do in order to make it work. So there was a transcendence about Chad's performance, but there needed to be. This is a man who's raging at God. This is a man who's lost even his faith. So he's got to sort of go to the edge of hope and death and life in order to make that character work. So of course you look back on it and see that that's where he was.
Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is only play in August Wilson's century cycle that is inspired by a real life public figure. What do you think it is about her story that is ripe for drama?
I can speak to the things which I love about her. I love that she's going to fight. The fight is not thinking about the consequences of what's going to happen. She's going to fight the fight because she must. Ma does that for the people she loves. She will take on anybody that she cares about. And so I love the fact that she didn't wait for power to come to her. She claimed the power. I love the fact that she was unapologetic about her sexuality. I think that's one of the reasons why August, I think, was drawn to her, because she lived outside of the rules. And when somebody lives outside of the rules, it becomes very clear what the rules are.
The one thing I love about August is the one thing that we have not had in a lot of narratives, especially in movies, is autonomy. We're always sort of shown in a filter of a white gaze, whereas August defines us in private. And if you ask any one of us who are on this Zoom call, if we know anyone like Ma Rainey who could beat your ass on Thursday and be in church on Sunday, who is unapologetic about their value. We grew up with people like that. My mom, my grandma, my aunties, all of them. And certainly I think that it's a great sort of start or building block for a center of a narrative, is to have a woman who was known, who had her whole own autonomy, who did not barter for her worth, and the men who were around her. I think that that's a great start in telling people what Black life was like in 1927 America by using this woman. And may I add, all she has is her value. That's all she's got. She's got that or death.
Talk to me about stepping into the character of Ma Rainey. Where did you find inspiration, and what did it feel like to become her on set?
Well, 10 years of acting school. I'm the geek, I'm that girl, you know. So you just have to look at the given circumstances. They said she had makeup that was like grease paint that was melting off of her face in the tent. She always looked like she was covered in sweat. She was always wet looking. She had a mouthful of gold teeth. She was described as not attractive, but because she was such a nurturer you know, some people were attracted to her because she was so kind to people. But once again, she'd have an orgy on Thursday, be in church by Sunday. But like everything, I always say that if someone did a story about my life and they went to my husband and my daughter, maybe talked to my mom, you'd still only get about 40% of me. The other part, you have to rely on your observations in life. You have to, in order to get at what is driving that person. What are they living for? And that's when I had to get into my Aunt Joyce. That's when I had to get into, you know, all the Black women that I know who sometimes have to muscle for their worth unapologetically.
One of the things I think about it that you talked about, which I thought was really fascinating, and I think it's very much so in the text, was that sense that despite being a mentor to Bessie Smith, she is in the process. Bessie Smith has started to usurp some of her fame. And so that dynamic of being an artist and feeling as though, you know, somebody else is taking your place.
She's at the end of her career.
The end of her career.
Glenn, Coleman, and Michael, so much of the electricity of the film comes from the interactions between you guys and as the boys in the band. There's a kind of jocularity and a camaraderie among you, but there's also a current of tension and rivalry. Tell me about how you work together to create that dynamic on film.
We started from a place of liking each other. And we start from a place of really being able to enjoy each other's company. And we did that purposely. I think we had a great dinner one evening after rehearsal where we all went out after just meeting one another in a rehearsal. Our friendship built on that foundation. And I think we all took great pains in trying to get to know one another as within the time frame that we had, so that we were comfortable cussing each other out, or we were comfortable
giving each other shit,
giving each other a hard. And so that took place on screen and off screen.
When George put together a group of men who truly respected each other, that was our baseline. Like, we admired each other and we wanted to show up for each other. And we would play with each other. I remember Chad came in one day, because he would come in, you know, it was early in the rehearsal. He would come in with his hat cocked to his side and his, you know, trumpet with him, and he would just come in. He comes in the room quietly, very graceful, and tries to sort of be invisible. And of course, there's something in me, and I don't know if it's the Cutler in me as well, but I'm like, oh, so you just ain't gonna speak to nobody when you come in? You walk indoors and don't talk to nobody? And so he said, oh, no, because he realized in this room with these other men, you gotta say hello to your elders, brother. And you gotta give respect. Go on over and say hello to Mr. Glenn Turner. Go ahead and say hi to Michael. And so basically, you know, we were jocular in that way, but he made sure every morning from then on, he came and said hello to his brothers. That was also a demand that we were saying, hey, this is the room that we're in. We gotta come in and we can't be in our own heads. We gotta come in and just give over to each other. So that's what we did. We're like herding cats on a Zoom. I'm surprised that we're as together as we are right now for the New York Times.
Yeah. No, it never stopped. I mean, you're on set with a bunch of men who ain't got no sense. They ain't got no damn sense at all. In between takes, during takes.
There were some takes you and I were crying, laughing, trying to get ourselves together. George was like,
crying,
laughing. It's those two. It's those two. It's Slow Drag Cutler. They're the ones.
Sure, just us. It was never you.
No. Toledo? No.
As you can tell,
don't get Toledo started now.
Nah. You can tell we don't like each other. We love each other and we respect each other greatly. And so therefore you can dance any kind of dance you want with each other. I think George can direct us any way possible. We had scenes where the heat was turned up so hot, and then we pull it back and see what's there. So he had us dancing all over the place because there was that foundation of trust and respect.
You know, one of the major questions presented by the film is this question of how you come to terms with your place in the world as an artist, an entertainer, also as a Black person at the bottom of a rigid racial hierarchy. Curious if any of you, if there were elements of the character stories that resonated with any of you in your own artistic and personal journey.
It's pretty seismic, to be very honest. I think that's why this play is so resonant, especially for Black artists. You're always trying to make sure your voice is heard and you're respected. This is one of my favorite scenes, and it may seem trivial, but it's when Ma stands there and drinks her Coca-Colas. And she says, I'm going to stand here because contractually, I asked you, I told you what I needed. I've had this, she had that conversation a few times and it's not there. And she said, I'm going to have to make everyone wait because this is just a matter it's about respect and respecting me.
Yeah, I mean, I find it exhausting. I do. I find it very necessary, but I find it exhausting. Only because you're fighting for all of it. You're fighting for your worth and your value. You're fighting for your place. You're fighting to be seen. You're fighting to be heard. It's always a fight. My big thing is when I have to fight for my ability. I can't stand that. And that part of me is just a part of me that went to acting school. They did all of that. They did theater, off Broadway, did the Regents, did TV or whatever. And then you go into a room in Hollywood and you see that only has a short shelf life when it's attached to somebody Black. That's what pisses me off. I feel like that's what all of August's plays are about, fighting for one's place in the world. And when you look at history, that certainly makes sense. In order for this system to work, a dehumanization needed to take place. This is a result of this. And why it's so great to perform August is because he writes us as fully realized human beings. So even the smallest role, you have something to play. Usually you have nothing to play. You don't know your name. You don't know where you came from. You don't know if you have a vagina or a penis. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. There were some characters I played that I really questioned that. It's just nebulous. It really is. You're just nebulous. And in his world, you're not nebulous. And here's the other thing. You don't have to be a king or a queen. You don't have to be someone up high. He elevates the least of these into the position of kings and queens. He has infused importance into our lives. Even if we didn't make it into a history book, he honors our pathology, our psyche.
I just wanted to ask a question from a reader. This question comes from Timothy from New York, who asks, what was the biggest challenge of adapting August Wilson's play from the stage to the screen?
I just think I think anytime there's a challenge, there's an opportunity. And so I think it became very interesting to me to try to support, the story of Ma's power and potency in the South. One of the things that's really wonderful about the work, it's one day. So a clock is ticking. And so intrinsic in that, it's instantly, the stakes are large. And so all you got to do is lean into that. And it was also very important to try to create Chicago as a city that was for the 100,000 Black people who moved there between 1900 and 1920. Not all of them got invited to that party. Not all of them got invited to that party. Some of them worked in these incredibly hot environments where they would work 6-7 days a week for 300 degrees, or they were working in factories. And also 1919, it just happened, where a young Black boy was swimming in Lake Michigan and he crossed the line and he was driven out by a group of whites and he drowned. And it resulted in 5 days of rioting that was started by these white ethnic mobs. And it ended up with people in the thousands being homeless. So you're not showing all of that, but in the territorialism of these guys coming down the elevated train, white eyes watching them, they're very aware that they are being watched. They also are better dressed than anybody who is watching them, because what I think is really subversive about the play, and I wanted to make sure was in the film, was this notion that by virtue of going north, things were lost as a culture. And so that's what I thought, that the adversarial aspect of giving up the South for the North. And I thought that was a really fascinating thing.
Thank you all again so much for joining us. This has been a really lovely and insightful conversation. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And in addition to hearing from these artists, we have a bit of the film itself to share with you. Here's a moment where Ma Rainey and the band are ready for their big recording session. Ma wants her nephew, who stutters, to have a role, but there's a bit of pushback. Take a look.
Moonshine Blues first. Moonshine Blues, Ma.
I ain't doing no moonshine, nothing. I'm doing Black Bottom first. Come on, Sylvester. Where's Sylvester Mike? Irvin, get him a mic.
Ma, the boys say he can't do it.
Who? Who say he can't do it? What boys say he can't do it?
The band, Ma, the boys in the band.
What band? Band work for me.
He stutters, Ma. They say he stutters.
I don't care if he do. I promised a boy he could do the part, so he gonna do it. And that's all there is to it. You don't stutter all the time. Get a microphone down here for him.
We don't have time, Ma. We can't.
If you want to make a record, you better find the time. I ain't playing with you, Irvin. Now I can walk out of here right now, go back to my tour. I don't need to go through all this. Go get the boy a microphone.
So interesting to see that scene again after hearing that great conversation. Next up, I'm going to turn things over to Jesse Green, our chief theater critic, for a conversation with Chad Baglin, Bob Martin, and Matthew Sklar, the co-creators of The Prom. The film has a starry cast, including Meryl Streep, Nicole Kidman, and James Corden. I want to tell you the names of a couple of the characters because you're going to hear them mentioned in the interview. Dee Dee Allen is the character played by Streep, and Barry Glickman is the character played by Corden. The Prom, of course, is a very different kind of show than Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, but the theater world is surprisingly small. So here's a fun fact. Michael Potts, who you just saw talking about his role as one of the band members in Ma Rainey's film, also appeared on Broadway in The Prom as the high school principal. Now to our conversation. Here's Jesse.
Well, thanks and welcome to this Zoom prom we're holding today with three of the executive producers of the Netflix movie adaptation of the Broadway musical, The Prom. I call you executive producers, which is not a title anyone in the theater world would ever know you by. Matthew Sklar is the composer of The Prom, Chad Beglin, the lyricist and co-book writer for The Prom, and then we have Bob Martin, the co-book writer of The Prom. Welcome to all of you and thanks for joining the Times today.
Thanks for having
us. Good to be here.
Did any of us here go to our high school proms? I did not. I was home scraping oboe reeds.
I did go to my prom. I actually went to all 3 years of my high school prom.
God.
They were pretty fun.
I actually did, but I even went after I graduated because I had some female friends and I was the safe date. So I even, came back and went a few more times.
I'm Canadian. We didn't have prom. We had senior dance, which I did go to. It's more polite. There's free medical. No, there's it's just not as big a deal. It's not as much a sort of stage of life thing. Small. Everything in America is bigger. Come on.
The overview I want to discuss today is how a successful stage musical becomes a movie musical for Netflix and what the changes and opportunities and compromises might be in that process. First, though, let's talk about the stage musical, which is, of course, how I first encountered The Prom and loved it. I thought it was about puncturing the narcissism of these Broadway performers who were looking for a good cause to rehabilitate their careers. And they settle on helping this lesbian teenager in Indiana who wants to go to the prom with her girlfriend but can't because of the town. And to me, it mostly focused on teaching the Broadway types a lesson while also secondarily teaching the Indiana yahoos a lesson. I guess my first question is, was that what you saw it as? And which was your way into the story, the girl or the actors?
For me, it was the sort of story of the two girls was sort of the heart of the show, and then we wrapped it in this comedic, envelope of these complete narcissists. And I think that's what hopefully helped the show from not feeling like an after-school special or that we were preaching or getting too mushy. We always could rely on the sort of clowns to break up that tension.
We probably look at it as sort of more balanced than I think than you're seeing it. And we had always set out to make the statement obviously in favor of inclusion. It was never going to be like, well, do what you want. It was always meant to make that one statement. But we know in order to make that palatable, we had to show both sides of the argument. But definitely we felt it was fun to puncture the narcissism of these liberal Democrats from Broadway who think they understand everything but really know nothing. That allowed us to be political, I think, because it was such what we felt was a solid comic premise.
I think the movie tried to deepen the emotional content of the narcissists as well. Matthew, did you want to chip in with this at all?
I feel the same as Chad, was kind of equal opportunity, blasting everybody, just giving everybody a little knock. And what I love that Chad and Bob did with the book, that every time it may have felt a little syrupy, they undercut it with a joke. And it felt like it was always the perfect timing when these guys knew when to do something hilariously funny to kind of undercut that tension. I thought it was a really a smart balance that they were able to create.
Let's talk for a minute about the hilariousness, particularly, again, starting with the stage show. I wondered, when I first heard that it was being made into a Netflix movie, I thought, well, gosh, there's a lot of inside theater humor in this show. What are they going to do with that? That's part of what made it hilarious, at least for theater, for regular theater goers, was, Les Mis and the Godspell bus and truck tour that they hitch a ride with.
The beauty of theater is that you can work it every night and you can start to remove those references that are so obscure that nobody gets them. I still think, and we all operate on this principle, that if you're going to portray a world, you have to show that you know exactly how that world works. And we have a lot of insider knowledge of the world of theater. So yeah, we gleefully put it in, but we knew it wouldn't always work. And for sure, some of that has been removed from the movie.
Well, I want to talk about that as we move into the movie. Does that change when you're writing a movie for Netflix?
I think we had to translate things that that we knew people wouldn't know, especially because it's being released globally. We had to make sure that some of these really inside things made more sense. So instead of non-equity, it's non-union.
What we've been talking about recently is how this is very much Ryan Murphy's interpretation of our stage show. Even though, Chad and I wrote the screenplay with Ryan, there's a difference when you're working on a film. We as writers can't see the whole picture at any one time, I think what I found quite beautiful about the film is how personal it was for Ryan. I think it really reflects his experience. And as you were suggesting, he digs deeper into certain story points, particularly Barry's past. And I think that's Ryan. I mean, we wrote a lot of those words, but it's partly at Ryan's request. And I think he was also skewing the whole thing to a different audience than a New York theater audience. I hope it's a younger audience, people who will really be affected by this material.
But I want to go back to the moment in which I assume Ryan Murphy reached out to you guys with his interest. When the call comes, we want to make your musical into a movie. It's a statement filled with thrill and a bit of threat as well. Did you have immediate qualms, or were you on board instantly?
Ryan came to see the show in January. I happened to be there that night, and at the end of the performance, he was with one of our producers, and he came up to me and he said, "I'm very proud of you. I don't know you, but I'm very proud of you. And I really love this show. And I have some thoughts. I have some good thoughts." And then within a matter of days, we found out that he really wanted to make a feature of this. And then 3 weeks later, Bob, I think you and I were in LA and we met with Ryan.
Yeah.
And he talked to us about how personal it was for him and how he really wanted to make it at Netflix because it would go global, because he said he wished he had it as a kid. And if there was a kid somewhere in Russia or Chechnya where it's like really dangerous to be gay, that kid can like be in his bedroom and open his laptop and watch this. And and feel like he's not alone. Like, and he really was it was very personal to him, and he won me over right away.
Yeah, and he told us that he grew up in Indiana and that he came out as a teenager and that it was difficult. His parents were angry with him. He couldn't take the person he wanted to take to the prom. It was amazing how much it paralleled Emma's story.
Yeah.
So yes, we were scared at first, but when we met with Ryan, we realized he really wants to keep this intact. He really was quite explicit about that. He didn't want to completely change it.
What were some of your fears that were not unreasonable?
Well, Matt and I immediately started betting which songs would be cut because we just assumed, he's not going to put them all in. So we were shocked when he was like, no, we're doing all the songs. And that's unheard of. So we were thrilled about that. I mean, some of them are shortened for time, but at least every song is represented in the movie, which was shocking because we were just, going down the list and saying this will never get in and that'll never get in. So
and there was a bonus song added under the credits. I'm curious about that.
Well, it's funny. We had actually written a new song for Barry, James Corden's character, but then it just did not fit. The tone was, we already had a scene that sort of was very heartbreaking with his mom, and so the idea was, well, is there any place for another original song? And Ryan said, why don't we do a credit song? And he wanted something very something very, sort of with a message about pride.
And I wonder if you could talk about the difference between a Broadway sound and the sound you were going for in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, the big difference is the scale. On Broadway, we were seriously limited on with the amount of players we could have. The minimum number of musicians required by the union at the Longacre Theater is 4. We after much begging, we got the producers to agree to 9 musicians, and our brilliant Broadway orchestrators, Larry Hockman and John Clancy, did an amazing job with technology and brains and smarts, making it sound like something. And we had 9 players. For the movie, we had almost 90, and 50 of them are strings. So, that's something you can only do in the movies. And it's so much emotion and so much color, and it just makes a songwriter very happy.
But was it also a little bit more of a pop arrangement, would you say, than a Broadway arrangement?
Some of them definitely were changed to kind of go more in the pop direction. The entire music team is basically Swedish, and they know their pop music. So, all the dance breaks are very different than the Broadway musical and they really sound pop and contemporary, and they could be on the radio. And also, they're just way more resources and more time to make those arrangements. Only one song changed keys. Everything else is in the original Broadway keys, and the one song that we changed keys for went up, and that was for Keegan-Michael Key to sing "We Look to You." He did it in D major instead of C major, and otherwise, every single song is in the original Broadway key, which I'm still gobsmacked by.
Surely, one of the things you worry about or feel sad about when jumping onto such a great project is you must have known you were going to lose your incredible Broadway cast.
Yeah, that's a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
It's been really, really painful.
We love them,
but it's unfortunately the reality of making a movie that's going to be global and that requires an enormous budget to actually make. Broadway is a very small place, really. It's a very specific kind of celebrity that it exists in a few blocks of New York. And we just couldn't get the money to make the film unless we used, huge, globally recognizable stars. Plus, Ryan had them all in his cell phone. Like, he just called his friends and they all said yes. I mean, that is why the movie got made. So yeah, heartbreaking working with people that we love and, developing this material with them. And then the movie happens. The movie was not something we were working towards or expected to happen, but also because, we didn't have a long Broadway run so the movie has been this fantastic thing in terms of getting this out to a larger audience. More people will see the movie on the first day than saw the Broadway show in the entire run.
And can see it forever, presumably.
Yeah.
Let's go to some of the book changes now, specifically. The 2 biggest changes were the foregrounding of the parallel stories of Emma and Barry. Emma's was always the main plot, but I feel like it was pushed even further. Bob, could you just sort of outline what we knew about her in the stage version versus what we know about her in the movie?
Well, we knew that when she came out to her parents at 16, she was kicked out of the house and raised by her grandmother. And we actually at various...
We did?
We did, but it was just mentioned in a line of dialogue. You know, we actually had the grandmother, we were trying to have the grandmother in the Broadway musical, but we simply couldn't do it. We didn't have the resources or the time. And as Casey said, he didn't want to put an ensemble member in a gray wig for one scene, you know? So this is one of the things that we were able to do with the adaptation. Yeah.
We get a huge amount more about the backstory of Barry Glickman. Barry is one of the ridiculous actors who comes to Indiana to rehabilitate his career by helping this girl, Emma. And, you know, although obviously in the stage musical, part of his motivation was his own unresolved conflict about his coming out and all that. This is really explored much more deeply in the movie.
We just simply had more real estate in the story in order to go into his backstory and actually bring his mother into the story eventually. On stage, we suggested how brutal Barry's coming out experience was with 1 or 2 lines of dialogue. When I say real estate, I mean both resources and stage time. Movies are generally speaking are faster. You can cut quickly. Every time you add something to the stage, you're, you know, adding maybe a set piece, a costume.
Yeah. You have to get out of it, and that takes time.
Yeah, you have to get out of it. That's like the whole exchange about the urinal cakes. That was written purely to allow for a costume change.
I think this needs more context.
Yes, please.
Well, when we're going into the principal's office, when Dee Dee is going to the principal's office. Yeah, in the Broadway show, he's alone on the phone talking to someone about what turns out to be whether urinal cakes are poisonous because somebody on the football team took a bite out of one. But we had to write this whole exchange that happens just on basically an empty stage. Michael Potts on the phone, just to fill time while Beth changed costume.
I was going to ask you whether most of the changes you've made to the music and the lyrics and the book in creating the movie are ones that that improve the storytelling and the story in some way that you wish they were in the show in the first place. But what I'm hearing is a lot of them couldn't be in the show in the first place. Did you in fact film more than you used, other than the usual editing? I mean, was the movie cut down to a shorter size than originally anticipated?
Yeah, I think the first cut I heard was over 2.5 hours. So they had to really cut it down, and they had to make choices. You gotta do what you gotta do.
But one thing that was interesting that we noticed is that they added this little bit at the top of the show in which we see the announcement of the prom being canceled. And we go from Emma's face, and there's no way that Ryan could have known that. In the early versions of the show, we began in Indiana with Emma and the announcement of the prom closing, and then we cut to Broadway. But it was never really very effective because we couldn't go close in on Emma's face, and we couldn't get that jump cut to the glamour of Broadway. We had to move sets and everything. It was never quite effective. So it was really interesting that he did that. He just did that instinctually.
Have you given some thought to the international audience for this?
I've heard people say, you know, there aren't proms in a lot of these cultures, and it's a very American thing. But I'm hoping that, you know, there are these, you know, points in your teenage life in every culture where you go through some sort of ritual or some sort of celebration that it's, you know, easy enough to figure out, you know, what we're talking about.
When did that meeting with you and Ryan happen, Matthew, after the show one night, you said?
It was like mid-January 2019.
And when did filming start?
December 2019, I think. I think it was that fast. It was really fast.
It's astonishing.
Yeah, it's astonishing. He really wanted to make it, and that's the thing. And when he was talking to Bob and me, and he he said, I just really want to make this. I really feel passionate about it and I want to get this made. And he did it.
So it's a good thing you started it in December. What happened in March when the theater itself was shut down because of COVID-19 restrictions?
We had 3 days left. We had finished, I believe, day 57, and then they shut us down for 4 months. And we had to wait, and then they had to figure out what they had to do, and the COVID protocols had to, be put into place. And Netflix dealt with epidemiologists and the local government to figure out how to make it work. And now I think The Prom is one of the first projects back shooting, and they're using that model to shoot all over the place.
I just want to close up with this success. Let's call it this. Just the fact of this movie being made is already a success. I mean, that it was made with so little compromise. And in fact, I think what I hear you saying is not even compromise, really. Enhancement is what I'm hearing from you. Certain things you could say in a film and do in a big budget property with real estate that you couldn't really do on stage.
Yes.
Is there going to be a sequel? I don't know, The Prom 2, Revenge of the Indianans.
Those musical sequels work so well.
They do.
Yeah, that's right.
I want to thank Matthew Sklar, Chad Beglin, and Bob Martin for joining us at the Times today. And I look forward to that sequel. And congratulations on The Prom.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
Before we close with one last song, I want to thank my colleagues, Alexis Soloski, Reggie Ugwu, and Jesse Green, all of our panelists, and most of all, you. I know most of you are proud Times subscribers. I hope you know that your support makes our journalism possible. So thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been a tough year for all of us, for the theater industry, which is the subject of this series, but also, of course, for this country and this world. As we wrap up 2020, I want to express my gratitude to all the artists and the audiences who have shared their stories and their time with us. Here's hoping that sometime next year, we'll all be able to see each other again in real live theater seats. Until then, let's keep talking and telling stories in whatever ways possible. Happy holidays, please stay safe. And now let's let Nicole Kidman and Jo Ellen Pellman bring us home with a tune about courage and perseverance.
Gotta stop.
Before you lecture me or kick me to death with those crazy antelope legs of yours, or whatever you're gonna do, I know I should do something. I just can't.
You gotta do this. You gotta do it for all of us people that are standing in the wings waiting to go on.
I'm too scared.
Let me tell you a story. It's 1975, and the original Company of Chicago is in previews, and the worst flu in history hits the cast. They're down to the 3rd cover for the role of Roxy Hart, and she's scared, just like you are. And Fosse, who is a real ball buster, is putting her through her paces. But she's petrified. Worst of all, she's doing the routine like she's a robot. So the Fosse, he says, hey, kid, snap out of it. You got the steps, you got the notes, but where's the sass, baby? And even though she'd never heard that word before, she knew immediately what it meant. And she went out there and she found that spotlight and she crushed that performance so hard. She had that whole audience standing on their feet, screaming bloody murder.
And that girl was you.
What? How old do you think I am? It was 1975. No. The point is, every Fosse girl knows that story. It's all about finding your light.
When a challenge lies ahead and you are filled with dread and worry, Give it some zazz. If your courage disappears, what'll get your fears to scurry? Give it some zazz. Zazz is style plus confidence. It may seem corny or kitsch, but when scared or on the fence, you'll find that zazz will soon make fear become your bitch. And if folks say you can't win, what'll stop them in a hurry? Give it some zazz. There's no contest for a girl who has some razzmatazz. So call that bluff and strut your stuff like no chick in this hick town has. Instead of giving up, oh, give it some zazz.
I just don't think I can do it. The thought of getting up in front of all of those people, look at my hands, they're shaking.
If your hands are shaking, just turn them into jazz hands. Doesn't that feel better?
No.
Try this.
This is awkward.
You don't understand the concept of zazz. The zazz is not the moves. The zazz comes from within. Do the moves and give it some zazz. Close your eyes. Think about Mrs. Green. Think about that fake prom. Now think of finally doing something about it. Oh, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing your zazz. Now follow me. Do like the brave and bossy do. And if they tear you apart, ask what would the bossy do? And make the people have a step, I'll change of heart. I'll change. And if folks say you can't win, what'll stop them in a hurry? Give it some zazz. There's no contest for a girl who has them razzmatazz. So call that bluff, there, and strut my stuff, bam, like no chick in this hick town has. Instead of giving up, give it some zazz. Now that you've found your zazz, it's time to show it to the world. You think you know how?